Did you text it to me or email it? Or do you have the Zoom ID or something? Or whatever is it? Let me just, yeah. Do you have the meeting ID? Whenever you're ready. Oh, sorry about that. Can you log in to check your videos?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah. I know it's been a long day. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I really appreciate those that are here in person, and I know majority of you like to join us online. Inshallah, alhamdulillah, we're blessed to have with us Brother Samir Azam. With us, he is with RBC, Dominion Securities, and inshallah, today we want to focus our halaqah today on the fundamentals of Islamic financing. How and what is Islamic financing in terms of what's permitted? What is the halal, mubah? And also, what are some of the tips that we can learn from experts in the field, like in this case, Brother Samir, who can tell us, as you know, by the end of February, our RSP season deadlines are done. What can we do with this? Because you see, what happens is, if we, and I'm going to try to put him on the spot, but if I have, let's say, $10,000 just sitting there doing nothing, I'll be taxed on it. But if I'm not going to use it, then I might as well protect it, or I might as well invest in it, or I might as well save in it. Different options depending on your situation and depending on the family. So inshallah, we're going to pass the mic on to Brother Samir, and he'll walk us through some slides. We'll share online as well, and for those that are in the masjid, you can see on the screen as well. We'll dim the lights a little bit, and inshallah we'll get started. Bismillah.
You want me to turn it on for you? I mean, for the Zoom. Yeah, no. Can you admit me so I can share it for your video? Turn this on. Share it. Can I share this on?
You should be able to share it now, yeah?
Let's see.
Share screen, yep. You don't need to join with the computer, just close that, yep. And continue, yep. Perfect. And then your PowerPoint.
Just let me know you're good. Can I see it?
Inshallah, as Brother Samir is about to bring up the image, give him a few seconds here. Let me ask you a question here. How many people are doing some sort of investment? Okay, so for majority of the people in the crowd here, those that are online, you can type in chat as well. Want to know if you are doing investment, have you taken any seminars on halal investment to make sure your investments are Sharia compliant, or to make sure you know where your investments are going? Yes, no, you're familiar with it. I have experts in the field as well. You brought a lot of subject matter experts with you today. Alhamdulillah. But it's good. The reality is just like, we scrutinize what we eat. How many times we go to the supermarket, we look at the label, and then we make sure that that label is really 100% halal, right? So similarly, we should do the same thing with investment. And of course, sometimes we cannot know 100% of the companies that we invest in, but that's why we have people like Brother Samir and the likes who, alhamdulillah, will guide us through this thing, inshallah. So Brother Samir, kick it off while we get your screen shared here.
Awesome. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Jazakallah khair. And I want to first of all thank SKC and Brother Asim for having me here today. So today, inshallah, we're going to just kind of cover two areas. I'm going to try to move along. As you know, us at the banks, we kind of have a lot of security features, so I can't even get into Zoom video for some reason. We use Cisco, by the way, so I know Asim works there. So I apologize about the little bit delay. So the topic we're going to discuss, and I'm going to try to share this here on our screen so you guys can see it. Just let me know, Asim, when you jump in. Is halal investing 101, what that means. So I know Asim mentioned Islamic finance. I know it's a broad area. I'm not going to get into, financing and lending. That's not my expertise, guys. So my more focus is going to be more on investing and how you can build your wealth and things like RSPs and TFSAs. So first thing first is, if you guys can see my screen there, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of move along and just go down the. There you go. So first question is, I always get this when I'm seeing your clients or when I'm doing events, Samir, what should I do with my wealth? That's the number one question, right? They're like, oh, I have all this money in cash. Should I just leave it? Should I put it in my mattress? What should I do with it? I don't know what's permissible, what's not, right? So we're going to cover a couple ideas. The agenda today, of course, quick 101, and then I'm going to go into some RSPs and TFSAs. As you know, RSP deadline's coming up, so I'll give you some tips, some ideas, how it works, how it can benefit you. Some people might want to do it, some people might not make sense, right? So we'll get into that. As you know, I'm with RBC Wealth Management. We love disclaimers, so you're going to see a lot of disclaimers, guys. As this is more educational purposes, of course, that's the goal here. So there's no always seek a professional tax advisor or a professional to seek any of your personal situation. So some of the stuff I discuss might not reflect. Again, my name is Samir Azam. I've been in the industry, alhamdulillah, now almost, I'm going to hit 18 years. By trade, I'm a portfolio manager. And alhamdulillah, my specialty for my clients, I only take on clients who truly want to invest based on Islamic principles. So that's one area I specialize in, and things like tax planning, retirement planning. We also kind of started, alhamdulillah, 5 years ago, calculating clients' zakat on investments. So that's been pretty awesome for us. I live in Oakville, so I'm in the area. If you ever need, you'll see me around, alhamdulillah. So I'll start with the 5 pillars of prosperity. Of course, it's not the 5 pillars of Islam. I'm talking about more prosperity. I took this out from Dr. Yaqub Mirza, who is one of the founders of the Amana funds in the US. They're now probably $4 or $5 billion. They're the largest Islamic mutual fund in the world, pretty much. And he wrote a book. If you ever want to read about it, it's called The 5 Pillars of Prosperity. So he talks about earn, of course, earn in a halal way. 2 is save, whatever you earned. 3 is invest it. So what he meant by, investing is invest in yourself, start a business, build up, an investment portfolio, whatever it is. Just make sure before you spend, make sure you invest. So the 4th thing you talked about, spend. A lot of folks, what they do is when they make money, they just end up spending it right away instead of kind of thinking about, let me maybe put away 10%, 20%, or 30% of my income. So that can help me maybe a year from now, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, right? So, and the last one is give, right? As a Muslim, you talked about, minimum, of course, zakat, right? But other things too. So if you're increasing your wealth, automatically, most likely your zakat will increase too. So you talked about that concept too. So I really live by this. Whenever I have client meetings, I always kind of talk about these things which are important. So I just wanted to share that with you. And let's get into it, right? So what is halal investing? I'm not going to get into all, 50 matters. I'm not qualified, of course. But, there's multiple things that Islam talks about, necessities to protect. So one of them being, of course, your deen, your nafs, your intellect, right? Your honor, but also your wealth, right? It's talked about how you should protect it. So this area I'm going to kind of just relate to. So it is important for us. So a lot of people just talk about, look, I'll just make money and I'll just spend it and I won't have any savings, I won't plan. But in Islam is actually encouraged to really understand what you could do with your wealth, right? So this concept's so important for us, right? So protecting our wealth. And the other thing is really important, right? I've been always told, alhamdulillah, listening to halaqahs and going to, when you're young and all that, there's 4 things are going to be asked of you. How did you spend your time? How did you spend your youth? If you gain knowledge, did you share that knowledge? And how did you earn your wealth? And how did you spend your wealth? So if you can kind of try your best to keep your wealth as clean, as halal as possible, of course, those are different definitions for that. There's different rulings. People have different opinions, but just the basics, just to understand as much as you can. And I think, alhamdulillah, you're kind of, you can answer that question where I've tried to keep my wealth clean. I tried my best. I did what I needed to do, instead of not understanding and then investing your money into certain things that might not be permissible, right? So I think these are really kind of things to go about. So what are the 4 core principles, right? When you're investing based on Islamic principles, okay, guys? So we're focusing more on investing. We're not talking about financing. So, after the meeting, after the seminar, like I wouldn't have a solution how to get an Islamic mortgage. I don't do that, just FYI. Just want to be open about this. So it's more about investing your wealth. Whatever's left over, alhamdulillah, how can I grow that? So there's 4 core principles, right? So we're going to the basics, because my job today is more about just educating you as much as possible. So if you're sitting in front of somebody and they're talking, then you can kind of look at, you can understand, does it make sense for me, for my family, or myself, or it doesn't make sense, right? So number 1, the first core principle is very simple, guys, and it's avoiding interest-based investing, right? So what is interest? Of course, there's different forms. You can concept the Arabic word of riba. I'm talking about simple. To me, what that means is money on money. So I cannot rent out my money to you. I can't give you 100 grand and ask you to give me back 110,000 without taking no risk, nothing. I don't care if you lose your job, whatever happens to you, you got to pay me back 110,000. In Islam, that's not permissible, because you haven't done any trade. You haven't shared no risk. You've passed all the risk onto one body and you haven't taken the risk. In Islam, trade is encouraged. So that's the number 1 concept, is avoiding interest-based investments. So anything that just sits there and just earns without taking even a small degree of risk is not permissible based on Islamic conditions, right? Number 2 is uncertainty. The Arabic word is gharar. So that we're going to talk about the uncertainty, where you should avoid, and I'll give you some examples. The 3rd is excessive speculation. So getting into an investment that has gambling mentality must be avoided. And 4 is you got to invest with ethical and moral values. So these are the core 4 principles that we should, when we're building a framework, we should look at. So let's go over number 1. Number 1 is, as you guys know, interest just means the Arabic word. Of course, it means to grow up. It's money on money. You're in a bad situation. Let me charge you 19%. That kind of situation. You guys know some examples. It doesn't matter if it's simple or if it's floating, or floating meaning like it's not floating in the air. What I mean is, if the interest rates can go up and down, or it's fixed or variable, they're usually not permissible. I'm talking about, guys, about investing here, okay? So, taking on a mortgage, that's a different story. I'm not going to get into that, right? So it's more about investing, earning interest income. Now, some examples, things like, if you invested into something like a GIC, as an example, usually it's non-permissible. Simplified, guys. GICs are not permissible because it's money on money. It's what you're doing is you're pretty much becoming a lender. You're lending the money, and then they are charging somebody else, and they're paying you money on money, i.e. interest. Okay, so when it comes to investments, GICs are not permissible. Other things like bonds are also not permissible. Why? Because bonds are also money on money transactions. It's like, say the Kenyan government says, look, I want to build a bridge and I need money to build this bridge. I'll take a loan from you and I'll pay you 5% back. Not allowed. Why? Because it's a money on money transaction. You don't own the bridge, so there's no asset involved for you. Now, Islamically, how you can make it permissible is simple. You tell the Kenyan government, I want to become an owner of this bridge. You put a toll there, and that toll return coming in, that revenue I get, I want a piece of that. So I own the asset with you, and I collect the revenue. See how the return could have been the same, but now there was no loan involved. You didn't give the bank a loan, basically. Like that's a bond. Example. And most mutual funds in Canada, the stat I looked up, 40% 4 or 5 years ago was like 62% of most mutual funds have some form of non-permissible income. So it's pretty high, guys. So you really need to look at your mutual fund and look under the hood of the car. Look, when you buy a car, I'm sure, mashallah, the brothers here, you open the hood, right? Or you just buy the car like that. I hope you don't just buy a car like that. So just make sure you just look under the hood of your investments, what it really has.
There's nothing under the hood. It's all electronic. It's a big battery. They took the engine out, man. No, but I know what you mean.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, but you guys understand, right? But a good point, right?
So question coming in here. Sorry to interrupt you. Just
no worries.
So what about, like, sometimes you get these stocks through companies and they've been assigned to you because you work there. It's one of the perks, right? How do you know? How do you decipher those? Because they're not really your own personal, choice. It's already kind of given to you, right?
Yeah. So no, really good question, right? Because so now this is a different, so if you're working somewhere, so I'm hoping you don't work for the LCBO because that's problematic.
Of course, yeah.
Right. So say if you work for a company and say the company might not be permissible. Now this is a very thick answer, to be honest with you. I'm not a scholar to say, but what I've spoken to muftis and scholars about is if you know the company you work for is producing like haram revenue, then, and you have no other choice, then maybe looking for a new company. That's what they're going to say, that, I'll be honest. But if you don't have an option and you need to provide for your family, then try to purify, go in and understand if 50% of the revenue is haram for this company, then if you make a $100 profit and take 50% of that out and purify, get rid of it.
Yeah. So
does that answer the question?
It does. But to further ask that, so let's say you work for a company that's permissible, no problem. But I'm saying when you work for them, they give you salary plus stock options. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got stock options. Sometimes you can take those stock options and you can invest them yourself, correct?
Yes.
So those investments, even though it's not, you may be limited to where you can invest them based on their portfolio, right? So how do we? So you're talking
about, look, I got a Sun Life, Manulife.
You got it. Exactly. Yeah.
It's a really good question. So the problem is with that, if the menu is not permissible, so you have a couple options. One is put it into a cash account.
Okay.
Some people could do that. Just put it all in a cash account, and because it's a benefit, right? So, for example, I put in 10 grand and my employer gives me 10. Don't lose on that, guys. That's 100% return. That's a benefit your employer is providing you. So, but now where does the money go? That makes it permissible, halal or not. So you have a couple options. If on the menu of cash, put it in cash.
Okay.
Yep. Or if you're like, man, I don't want it because that cash is technically maybe being lent out and you're very strict, then maybe look on the menu for equity-based funds. Okay, equity, of course, no bonds, no fixed income, because that's kind of like interest again, and then build it up from there. And then look under the hood. So if you see a lot of insurance companies, a lot of banks, a lot of alcohol, gambling, just try to avoid those businesses.
Thank you.
Yeah, does that make sense?
I think so. The person who asked that question, if you have a follow-up, just type it there. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that helps. And then you could also purify. So if you look under the hood of your investments once a year and you see, okay, maybe 30% of the sectors are non-permissible. I tried my best. I did what I could. Now just purge. So if you made $100 profit, take $30 out and, maybe talk to your local imam saying, look, this is purification money. Who can I give it to? Like, who can I really? It does not count as sadaqah or zakah, of course, because it's like sadaqah and zakah has to come from pure sources, right? So I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Inshallah.
Okay. Awesome. And I'll get into that in a second because there's some rules. Another thing I always want to say is some people come to me saying, Samir, if it's 2% or 30%, 2% is okay, but 30% is not okay. Guys, there's no ethical interest. It's a principle matter. Okay, so a lot of times it's based on principle. It's not based on their end result. It's just how it's designed. Like, what is the process for you to get there? Like, I could make $10 selling oranges, or I can make $10 selling alcohol. It's still $10, right? But how do I get there? You got to understand that, right? So those are important things. And look, a lot of the major financial crises that happen in the global economy the last 60 to 70 years is because of people taking on too much debt and the interest got up there and they can't afford to pay it back. Majority of the financial crisis in the world has happened because of taking a lot of money that they can't afford. Look what happened in 2008 and 9 in the US economy. A lot of people took on loans to buy these houses they couldn't afford, right? And so, when the piper came to collect, they didn't have the money to pay. So those are really important things to understand. Living within the means or living below the means is very important when it comes to your finances. I just want to quickly just go on Ghadar. Ghadar just was, it's kind of like uncertainty. So there's another concept is like, guys, if I don't own this, can I sell this to you? No, right?
No.
So I have to own an asset to sell it to you. So that's the concept in the investment world nowadays. You could technically sell stuff that you don't own. So there you go. Brother just said, like shorting an asset, it's not permissible Islamically because you really don't own. Like I got some really good examples here. It's like, can I sell you, I'm a fisherman and I'm going out to grab fish, right? And I'm telling you, let me sell you all the fish in the sea before I go out there.
Right.
That's an uncertain contract. You don't know what you're getting into. So that's kind of like the financial contracts that are today, futures, options, short selling. If you hear these terms, kind of question them first. The other one is excessive gambling. The Arabic word is maisir, which is meaning pure speculation, zero-sum game. I have to win and you have to lose, right? It's like me going to Casino Niagara. Alhamdulillah, I don't go. I'm just saying. So if I go there and, I put on, black or red or whatever they play, right? That's not permissible, of course, because it's a zero-sum game. Same thing with investing. If you're making bets, huge bets, not understanding the business, because as a Muslim, you need to actually invest in the business, understand the business, rather than just thinking about, I got to make quick money and make huge bets, and you can lose your shirt. So those things are usually, most scholars say, not permissible.
And on that point, I know like the youth here as well and online, I know now with sports, they're really advertising this sports betting. That's still betting. It's still gambling. It's not permissible at all. Don't get caught up in this. They're just finding another way for revenue streams. But for us Muslims, we do not bet. This is gambling and stuff. I know, sorry, maybe brother's a question. Yeah, brother just made a good point from the audience that it's being marketed to the audience, especially to the youth, and they really get you. Now they're even like selling moments, and then you trade them like trading cards, right? It's like they just want you to spend click, as you said, and it becomes habitual. So again, we repeat, any form of gambling, including sports betting, it's not permissible. It's just based on the same thing he just said before.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? So same thing with investing. Most scholars that I've spoken to understand fiqh al-mu'amalat, they always say, get away from the pure speculation, gambling mentality, like I'm trading Apple in and out, getting out. Now it's become like a ticker rather than a business. And as a Muslim, you really need to kind of invest in the business. So at least, give us some time, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, not daily getting in and out. But now you're just kind of speculating and you could lose because it's by chance now. You haven't really studied.
I don't mean to pause here because I have like 3-4 questions, but one I think you covered. So I just want someone asked, equity-based funds is okay, right?
Yeah, equity-based funds are okay. Just if you're talking about that pension question. So if you have money in a pension and like Sun Life or Manulife, and the menu has no options, you still need to look what type of equity funds you are.
Okay.
Now I'm going to go over the rules on the equity screening.
Okay.
If you have control, then the tolerance is you have to follow the rules.
Okay.
If you have no control and it's a pension fund, then at least look for equity-based funds. So that answer has to be more specific, right, to that pension.
Perfect. And I know the brother you already asked, or sister you're asking about group RSPs and fractional investing. That's all coming. Let him go through the slides. We'll talk about group RSPs.
Yeah, I'll get into all that. Yeah. So some of the things that you must avoid, guys, like when it's investing, everybody knows it's very simple. It's alcohol, of course, or don't consume it, so don't put your money into it. Things like that harm, like tobacco, impure stock, like porn, weapons of mass destruction, adult entertainment, gambling, and interest income. These are the main areas. So if you cannot do yourself, if you cannot screen yourself, and you're looking at an equity fund, at least do the bare minimum to look for this stuff in the fund fact sheet. Okay, right? That's really important just at a starting point, right? Let me move on with so this is the first screen. It's like revenue. So the revenue can come from these sectors, okay? Things like, so what are the options, right? So some people say, look, I gotta leave money in my mattress. I'll buy some real estate or land. I'll open up a Popeyes, right? I'll buy gold. My focus today is just talking about how you can invest in investable assets, right? So buying a business is great. I think that some folks do really well with. Our focus today is more about, what can I invest in my RSPs, my TFSAs, those type of accounts. So what are the rules, guys? Just simple. Just going in, it's rules-based. So Islamic investing is rules-based investing. So you're following a rule, a guideline. It's viable to interest-based investing. It's based on the investment that the companies you're investing in. You're trying to make a return on equity and fairness. So it's not like you're buying these, contracts that the risk is being passed on to one person and you're not taking no risk, right? So these are important things to kind of keep in mind. And it's profit and loss. Of course, nobody wants to lose money, guys. Of course, nobody wants. But when you're making an investment, the concept is profit and loss. It's not just profit, right? So there's no halal GIC, I'm sorry to say, right? So, okay, what are the rules? So it's not like Samir made this up, right? Let's just be honest, right? So what are the rules? So there's 4 or 5 bodies around the world that have come together in a consensus ruling by scholars who understand fiqh al-mu'amalat. So number 1 is the Accounting Audit Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. They're called AOFI. So this is the rule book that we follow for our clients because it was developed in the 1990s by scholars, and their scholars are all around the world. So different school of thoughts, from Malaysia, from Bahrain, AOFIs in Bahrain. And they come up with standards and rules on how Muslims should invest. Okay, so that's one. Now then what happened, when AOFI came around, you start to see a lot of the Western institutions like the Dow Jones, the Morgan Stanley, the FTSE, the FTSEIs, the London stocks, they came up with their own Sharia boards and Sharia indexes based on the rules that I just explained, sectors, and I'll go over a couple of the items too. Now, locally, I highly recommend our own, Dr. Hamid Slimi has a board called IFAB, the Islamic Financial Advisory Board. They're a local Islamic board. So if you are a company or institution, or even an investment advisor, portfolio manager, and you need some guidance on how locally you can get access, I highly recommend to reach out to, they're called the Islamic Financial Advisory Board, IFAB, and Dr. Hamid Slimi is he's on the board, right? He's chair. With Rehan, these guys. So check them out if you want to, just to kind of get an idea. Local, all these bodies are more global, just to kind of but if you wanted to get a local, you're more than welcome to reach out. Sorry.
And global is good because you need the foundation. We know about Malaysia and how they're leading the world in finance. That's why the rest of the world is attracted to halal financing, because it'd be one thing if you do halal, financing, but you have negative results. But because it's such positive, it's obviously going to be beneficial for other industries or other countries to pick it up as well.
Oh yeah, you hit it bang on, right? Because in 2008 and 9, the Dow Jones S&P is a Western institution. It's a Western institution, so it's not an Islamic institution. They said their traditional model, which has everything, banks, military, alcohol, everything in there, and then the Islamic filter on, and that actually had lower volatility during the crisis. So I truly believe the Islamic rules actually protect you too. Remember, going back to protect your wealth, protect your mal. So you got to understand, these scholars looked at all these, when they understand the FIT ruling, they kind of looked at all these things to understand how they came up with these rules. It's not perfect, of course, but it's better than the traditional route, guys. That's what you have to look at. So what's the process? There's 2 rules. Business activity, I told you guys, where's the revenue coming from? It can come from the ones I mentioned, interest, alcohol. And then the second rule that they came up with is the balance sheet of these businesses, okay? So what I mean by balance sheet, I'm just gonna share this visual here. Balance sheet means, say I'm a company that sells medical devices, that's permissible to me. But say example, I built my business on loans, interest-based loans, and I have too much debt. That company is not permissible also. So it's an equity, of course, it sells water or medical device or iPhones, example, but if it has too much debt, that means it pays too much interest. So there's a certain threshold that these scholars have come up with. The other thing, or these Sharia rule books. The other thing is also these companies or investments can't have too much cash. So think about it like this. I'm a company that sells iPhones. You guys know what that is, right? Everybody has an iPhone here, mashallah. All right. So now if I sell iPhones and if I have a lot of cash and I'm keeping too much cash for like years and years, most likely I'm going to look like I'm going to become, I'm going to invest this cash into interest-based products because I'm not investing this cash back in my business. Right? Like I'm not taking like Apple is not buying other businesses or it's not reinvesting in its employees. It's got too much cash. That means it's going to too much earn interest, or it has too much debt. It's going to pay too much interest. So cash and debt is another screen that must be put on. So it's not just if you sell iPhones, you need to also look at how much this company has debt and cash. I know it's a little bit more complicated, but this information is publicly available. You could just go type in how much debt does Tesla have, or how much debt does an oil company have, or a gold company, and just understand that concept, cash and debt. Okay, so those are the kind of it's a little bit more technical, but it's once you kind of get into it. Or what you could do is you could just hire a professional like myself, and I'll just do it for you. Yeah, right, something like that. So
good idea.
I know, so it's a tough crowd, right? So I'm saying, brothers here. Allah bless you guys. So now when I was talking about this, the Islamic benchmarks, this is by S&P Dow Jones, said that experienced significantly lower volatility. What I mean by lower volatility, guys, is less up and down, right? During the global financial crisis of 2008 and 9. So the rules really help. Because the rules, think about it like this, right? Remember I talked about the debt? Okay, let's say there's a company that sells software. Right? We agree software is permissible. Which one would you invest? The company that makes $1 million, both make $1 million each, but one has more debt than the other one. Logically, which one would you invest, guys? Less one, right?
With less debt.
Yeah. So think about it. So when financial crisis happens, what do you think investors get scared of? They're like, oh my God, that company has a lot of debt. I need to get out.
Yeah.
I want to go to the company that's quality, has no debt, or zero debt, whatever it is, right? So just think about logically, let's take out the Islamic filter out for a second. Just think about logically, even if you're not following the principles, you automatically want to run to quality. So the Islamic screens lead to more of a quality screen.
SubhanAllah.
Right? Just think about it, right? Like just really looking at it. So this is another, I just took this out chart here. The light blue line is the S&P Sharia filter, the S&P 500, the biggest 500 companies in the world, and the S&P 500 traditional is the dark blue line. Guys, you're not losing out. I get a lot of people say, oh, if I invest halal, I miss out. I'm like, you're not missing out. I'm being honest with you. You're not. This is not me making this up. This is by S&P, a Western institution, global brand, telling you, hey, it's working, right? So that's something to kind of keep in mind, okay? I talked about, avoids excessive speculation, some of the sectors that you can invest. So for the folks who are kind of not too many options, but they're looking at mutual funds, so look for healthcare, IT, energy, real estate, industrials, right? Some utilities you got to be careful with. Utility companies have a lot of debt, but selling energy, selling hydro is permissible, but just keep an eye on the debt. Communication services, these are sectors that you can invest your money in. Yeah. What's available nowadays? So alhamdulillah, there's a lot of solutions. So for us, I don't want to give myself a shout out, but we have solutions, of course, and I can chat with you after about that. But there's also Islamic ETFs now. When we started, honestly, like 15, 20 years ago, nobody wanted to talk to us. It's get away from me. And I'm just kidding. But it was kind of amazing. We were just trying to make it halal at that time. That's it. We just cared about, you go to a restaurant, and we're like, hey, is this Zabiya? Alhamdulillah. I don't care how you make it, man. I just want to make sure it's halal. But then you eat it. I'm just kidding. Now, alhamdulillah, what we want to achieve is, we want that halal basic screen, but we want to shoot for excellence. We want to do a homework.
I think what you're saying is the way we scrutinize the way our food we're bringing this now into the investment industry as
Yeah,
well.
100%, right?
Which it should be. That's
It
what we
should be,
want.
right? So it's very important that we should have this now too, because with technology, right, with shape, Google, I'm kidding, sorry, but there's so much information out there.
She's not. We have Mufti Chat GPT, brother.
Okay, Mufti Chat GPT. I gotta check that one out, right?
AI is next level, remember?
Yeah, it's next level. Awesome, mashallah. So and then there's also now ETFs, exchange traded funds, that are available on the exchanges that investors might want to look at. There's a mutual fund in Canada that's available. There's a Sukuk. Sukuk is kind of like, it's a revenue bond. So I just explained to you, remember I was talking about the Canadian government takes a loan as a bond. A Sukuk is like a revenue bond. So it's based on you own the asset and you collect rent. So it's kind of like, it's not common in Canada. It's usually common in the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa, so Malaysia, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Dubai. UK government actually issued a Sukuk too. Oh, people don't know about this. The UK government actually issued a Sukuk 7-8 years ago. And the funny part was they put money towards a parliament building, like a government building. And in the Sukuk contract, they said, you guys can't, the senators and the politicians, they like to have their drinks after. There was no bars allowed in that building. Because the Sukuk guideline said, we're giving you money for this.
This is the requirement.
This is the requirement. Right? So
it's
an article. You gotta look it up. I'm not making it up. Just go look up the Sukuk Parliament building in the UK. This was done like 70 years ago. So it's pretty awesome, right? So that's what a Sukuk is. You can invest in gold, like real gold, real asset. Just make sure the gold investment has real gold backing. Like try to avoid the IOU golds as much as possible, where somebody says, I'm giving you like paper. Try to own an investment that is backed. The paper is backed by real gold in the back end. Yeah,
I not the US dollar. No, just okay. But that's a different topic. We'll get there.
Yeah,
you mentioned gold and backing stuff, and I don't know if you have a topic on this, but I'm sure it's a question out there. If not, I'll ask the question. What about all this cryptocurrency investment?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, like crypto is kind of like this. Look, if you were all in the 2000 .com. Mashallah, right? If people went through the .com burst where, if you had www something and then people just give you $1 billion, right? That was in the .com era, right? So I think crypto is going to go through that phase too, where the hype is so much now. So maybe 1 or 2 or 3 things will survive, like the technology, like blockchain, but 98% is going to go bankrupt because it's just so hyped up.
Right.
And I think the same thing is going to happen with this AI, chat GPT, because as human beings, we like to hype it up. Yeah. And then we realize, oh my God, okay, let's just go back to meeting in person, right? Or, right? Like,
the pandemic proved that, right? No, all joking aside, right? All this technology virtual, and then people are like, no, I want to come in person, right? Or I need social. People are breaking the laws to just meet in people's homes, right? Because they couldn't take it anymore virtually. So you're right. All these things come back with hype.
But what happened with crypto, guys, Brother Asim, is it became into a gambling asset. Sorry to say. People start trading crypto like in Urdu, say, jaldi, jaldi, I need to make money quick, right? And then the problem was a lot of people probably get burned. Why? Because they're following the herd, and never follow the herd. That's the rule of thumb in investing. Because you'll buy most likely at the top. When everybody's buying, you kind of want to buy the other side, right? And you have to have sabr. That's the key with investing. I tell my clients all the time, mashallah, like, yes, we're going to have some sabr, because it takes time. Good things take time, right? So for crypto, I think the problem was about everybody just quick. And the problem nowadays is you got all these apps, people walking, their dog. I know we don't have, I'm just kidding, but you're walking on your street and you're trading on your phone. Seen those commercials?
Yeah.
Right? They're walking their dog and then they got the phone and they're trading. And once they buy a stock, there's like confetti. It's not the way.
They even have softwares written so it can just trade for you based on this is my low threshold. It's like, you're not even doing anything. It's like day trading. Yeah, Brother Muhammad, you had a question?
Yes.
Good point.
Brother Muhammad, mashallah, really good point from our brother here. When you're investing, time horizons should be, you're talking about being long-term, right? Is that what so?
Like, what do you say? What do you recommend?
Oh, 100%. So, of course, look, you want to at least invest 3+ years minimum, I would say. Think of or even longer, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. The clients who've been with me, mashallah, 15 years, they've made the most money. Why? Because they think about it, right, guys? Like if you would have bought Apple at like $10 a share and you went through all of the ups and downs. It's not a recommendation to buy Apple right now. Please.
He's just using an example.
So, right. But just if you have long-term, in between, you can pull money out. Like my clients are always like, oh, it's nearly 30,000 per Hajj. I need to start a business. That's what the money's for, for you to use it. But if you can build it and have someone and wait long term, and I take this cue from Warren Buffett, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you add Warren Buffett, you guys know Warren Buffett, right?
Absolutely.
Right? I would say he's like, you ask him, what's your time horizon? And he's 97, he says forever. Right? That's his time horizon. I'm like, forever? What do you see? So meaning he's just saying invest long, like slow down, right? Right? Take your time. So, and then there's also real estate investment trusts. So these are publicly traded. Think about buying a property manager that owns 100 properties and you collect rent. There's another way to invest in REITs. They're called REITs. So you're investing in a professional manager that collects rent for you instead of you buying a garage for $1 million. No, alhamdulillah, the garage is now 700 now, right? It's come down a little bit in the property value.
Since you mentioned real estate, I'm going to go to the question that brother asked here earlier. Can we do fractional investing in real estate?
Yeah, so fractional investing. So the way I look at it is, say a property, I'm just walking this through.
Maybe you can define what you mean by fractional investing.
Fractional investing means, guys, the question is, can I invest fractional? So I'm kind of like, say that a property is $1 million and I'm getting, 1 million investors to put $1 each.
Oh, okay.
Example.
Okay.
Or 1,000 to put 10,000 each.
Right.
So nothing wrong with that, right? As long as that property, you're not leveraging that property and taking on loans and paying interest on it.
Right.
Number one. So try to buy more equity. Secondly, just make sure the tenant, if you rent it out, that tenant is not the LCBO.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Or somebody else. So those are just two simple conditions. One is just don't leverage up and take on debt too much that you're going to kind of drown in interest. And the second is just make sure if you're going to rent, lease it out, make sure the tenant is selling a halal as much, selling something that's halal.
Makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
Does that help? So fractional banking is permissible. There's nothing wrong with that. But it just make sure you're vetting the company who's doing this, because it's kind of like that cryptomania. They'll launch a company, they'll take your money, and then after 3 years, brother,
it's gone.
It's gone, right?
Yeah.
So just make sure. I'm getting into the RSPs.
It's coming.
Oh, 100%. I'm coming. If anybody wants to kind of study about Islamic investing, I've studied these 3 books. They're really amazing. They really help me. If you want to read through it, Islamic Finance, Why It Makes Sense by Dawood Bukhari. He runs one of the best universities, Islamic finance universities in Malaysia. Monam Salam and Sheikh Talal Del Renzo, they put a Muslim guide for personal finance. And then Dr. Yaqub Mirza, one of the founders of Amana Mutual Funds in the US, 5 Pillars of Prosperity. I highly recommend, if you want to kind of keep that in mind, if you need the names, I'll send them to you. So let's get into RSPs, guys. So financial planning is like a roadmap, right? So you're dealing with your budget, you're dealing with your goals, children education. So it's kind of like, you're going through all these, you're going through a road that's not straight. It's kind of maneuver. So you just have to understand, how to kind of put things like, what is my spending? What's my budget? All these things are important. I know I'm not going to talk too much about this because I want to get into RSPs. So I'm going to skip through some of this stuff. So RSPs is a really good tax minimization strategy for some clients. So for some folks, it's not the best for everybody, but for some folks, it's really good that you can reduce your taxes. And I'll get into that. So I love this. I just want to show you this. If you don't have a good tax strategy, this is what the CRA does. Look at the visual here. They'll send you a notice saying, how much money did you make? And they'll just say, send it to us. You like that?
Now you know why we stand up here and ask for donations. Send it to us here. Say that we send to us the masajid or whatever, and send less to over there. They get enough. We need some too, right?
So just hope you don't get this in the mail.
No, hopefully not.
And then this is my strategy, right? Dear Revenue Canada. I'm writing to cancel my subscription. That cannot be your tax strategy too. So kind of leading into RSPs, how RSPs and TFSAs work. So I have this little visual, so I'm going to break it down. So number one is when you're making a contribution to an RSP, it helps you reduce your income taxes. There's a deduction. So let's use an example. If I make, I'm just throwing a number. If I make 130,000 a year, example, and I put down 10,000 in my RSPs, my taxable income becomes 120. So now I only pay taxes on 120. So you get a deduction. A tax-free savings account, there's no deduction when you put money into a tax-free savings account. Okay, so that's number one. Contribution is you get a tax deduction. The other one, you don't get it because it's after tax money. TFSA, when you're putting it's after tax money, right? Are both tax exempt? Not exempt, but tax deferred. You could, while the money stays in there, the RSP and the TFSA, if the money grows from 50,000 to 100,000, while it stays in there, you don't have to pay taxes. You guys are with me? Okay. Yep. So that's second benefit. Third benefit is for TFSA, tax-free savings account, say I buy shares of Microsoft in there and it grows and I want to sell it and I cash it out, there's no tax. If I make 30,000 there, 20,000, 50,000, doesn't matter. There's no tax on that amount, that withdrawal. Okay. For RSPs, there is. Because remember, upfront, you got a tax deduction. Right? Remember, upfront, you got a tax deduction. So on the back end, the government says, well, it becomes your income now. So if you pull out money from your RSPs, it actually becomes your real income. So you have to pay taxes on it.
But maybe you can highlight, but when you reach a certain age, like if there's senior community, then there are some shelters along the way. Is that true? Or it doesn't really matter what age group you're in?
Oh, no, 100%. You're right on.
Yeah, so maybe you can just address that as well.
Very good question. So the purpose of an RRSP, which stands for Registered Retirement Savings Plan, is while you're earning income, high income, to me, it makes sense if you're making over 90,000 a year, then RSPs make sense to me. Somebody might disagree, but I'm just saying, you want to put money into an RSP account, get your tax deduction, let it grow tax deferred. And when you retire or when you're not making any money in an RSP, then you could take it out when your income is low. That's the purpose of an RSP. For retirees, or when you're retiring, you can move an RSP into something called RIF, a retirement income fund. You're allowed to do that. And that gives you better pension credits after age 65. It gives you more tax credits. So there are benefits. But the whole bottom line, Brother Austin, I just want to say is, put money into RSPs when you have high income, like over 80, 90,000. It might make sense for who makes 60. I'm not debating that here. And then pull it out when you have no income or low income.
Makes sense.
Right? So that's the key. It doesn't mean you have to be 70 years old or 80 years old to pull out. You can pull out at 50, 60, whatever you want. Pull it out in a year. Say for 1 year, I'm not going to work because I'm going to, alhamdulillah, go, take care of some orphans in Turkey or wherever, right? Take a year off, go pull out money in RSPs.
Right.
Because there's no income.
So it's not just for retirement, but maybe rainy days or whatever it may be.
Or your income is low.
Or your income is low.
I mean, yes, the purpose is to use for retirement.
Right.
Just saying. But that's why you should max out your TFSA, because TFSA is really good for short-term money.
Right.
Right. If you're maxing RSPs, use your TFSA as that short-term vehicle because it's tax-free. And the other thing I just want to say is for the age for RSPs at age 71 has to go into a RIF.
Right.
You could do it before, but at age 71, it has to go to something called retirement income fund because the government says, look, at 71, you got to take some money out of this. And usually it's like 70% nowadays because inflation's high. Before it was like 5 or 6, but it's around that 7% that you're allowed to. Is it 7-ish now? Right? So 7-8% you could pull out from your RIF. But RSPs you can pull out anytime. There's no issues, but it becomes your income. Yeah? Where should we invest it? Yes. Yes. So like I explained. Yes. So you have 2-3 options here, right? One is you look inside the mutual fund what it is, if you want to kind of stick with your company, or no. So balance. I wouldn't touch balanced. Balance, because balance 40% is interest. So off the bat, anything with balance, avoid. That's one. Number two is, or hire somebody who specializes in it, do it for you. That's number two. Number three is, if you want to do it yourself, go type in on Google Islamic ETFs, right? And there's a couple that trade on the US stock exchange that you could buy. Okay? So there are some options, but if you want to keep it with your bank, and because the problem with the bank side, on the retail side, the retail branch level, you got to come to the wealth management side because somebody's got to customize it for you. If you want to stay with the bank. If you want to do yourself, then you got to do the screening, right? I kind of give you the screen. You can email me. I can give you the rule book if you want to do it yourself, right? Just anytime, right? So these are 3-4 options, but at least it's the basic. If you're going to keep it in your mutual fund, then balance, that means 40% is interest income. No, and then if you're going to do that route, I'm recommending you. I'm very kind of conservative and strict on what I invest for my clients, but I'm just saying not everybody will have that option. So I'm trying to be more easy understanding. If you want to go mutual funds, then you look under the hood, and I explain to you, avoid insurance. Like, I know just don't use this against me, but I can't even buy RBC shares. Just FYI, right? Even though I'm RBC Wealth, I can't because I got to follow the rule book. Right? Does that make sense? Right? So you could look at the banks, avoid them, insurance companies, alcohol.
So I think he brings up a good point. For those online, this question was about, when you do the RSP investment, how do you make sure it's invested properly? So first of all, you can have your RSP sit as cash and have them then work with someone who's in the field like yourself or others to help you invest in, right?
Correct.
It doesn't have to automatically go into some random investment.
Yes.
You have choice, you have flexibility. Maybe you can talk more about the process. So you put money in a way, it goes as liquid cash, and then you can invest it like you would like any other investment, right?
100%. So you just want to kind of question what's type of investment. So just like all I say is sometimes, like I ask clients like, what made you put money in? They're like, well, I didn't spend time. I went to the branch, 5 minutes, jaldi, put it in, and I'm on my way. So just take a step back and understand, okay, because remember, you don't want to be 30 years later, like, oh my God, what did I earn all this money for?
Right.
This is very important, right? So just kind of take a step back and understand, look, tell the banker or whoever you're dealing with, I can't invest in these. I'm sorry. These are my principles.
And they respect you. They'll actually respect you, and they'll find ways. And if they don't know, they will contact people who don't know, because mashallah, people are now getting more knowledgeable.
Or just reach out to me, like I'll give you my contact and I'll try to direct you. If I can't, inshallah, I'll try to direct you. Maybe there might be some folks out there that can help you, inshallah.
Well, before you go, I have a question. Someone from Malaysia, wa alaikum assalam, good morning there for you. They asked, what are some halal TFSA investments?
Okay. Yeah, so same thing. So TFSAs are halal, no wrong, nothing wrong. It's an account, right? What type of investments you could do is, I honestly think check out those Islamic ETFs.
Okay.
Just as a basic start point, right? So Google, just type in Islamic ETFs, and there's going to be 2 or 3 that's going to pop out. Go look at them, research them, see what's under the hood, right? That's one. Or number 2 is look for a professional who can help you. That would be my answer, right? If you don't want to do it yourself and look for it, then you hire a professional. You would pay that professional a fee to do the work for you. Hope that answers. Now, TFSA, guys, very important. There's limits. I just want to go over the limits. It's amazing now. It's $88,000 is the limit now. It started in 2009, right? 88,000. So imagine you have, spouse times 2 now. 88 times 2. This is getting close to like 200 grand almost, right? 190 plus in less than 190, but in tax-free money that you could park and invest in and let it grow. So imagine you let it grow in 10, 15 years, sitting like 500, 600,000 over time. That's tax-free money, guys, that you can pull out, do for anything you want. It's very powerful. Like I wish the TFSA was there for, the US had a TFSA similar. It's called an IRA for like 30 years. Canada's kind of almost slow, as you know, 2009. We started this. So every year the limit is 6,500 if you max the limit. But the biggest thing, the survey we did at RBC Wealth, the Canadian population, only 37 or 40% people even put money in their TFSA. It's so underused. So think about it, right? Just so it's tax-free growth. Remember that. There's no tax on that money.
Maybe you can run a real life example, right?
Yes.
I'm a regular person working, family, kids, whatever. How should I properly allocate for RRSP and TFSA? Does it matter? Assuming it's in the mid 30 to 40 age group. What's the guidance here? What's the path?
I got an example for you.
Please go for it.
I want to show an example.
Yep.
It's very powerful. So this strategy I do with a lot of my clients. It's a very powerful strategy. So think about Yusuf, right? Age 40 years of age, right? Let's say fairly young guy, a little bit younger than me, mashallah, right? He's an IT professional, right? And earns 130K a year. I'm just using, doesn't matter, it could be less, more. I'm just using this number, right? And assuming, he's in a tax bracket of 43%. So in Canada, guys, if you make 130,000, because Canada is like taxed heavy, so you got to find angles. Mashallah, there's some really good tax advisors here. They'll give you some great advice. They'll all tell you tax. I don't even talk about return. First thing is like, how's your tax situation? Like your portfolio manager, talk about performance. They're like, no. We talk about tax first, right? So this is the issue. So the idea is all about reducing your income taxes. So I got a strategy. So say Yusuf takes 10 grand, okay? Saves 10 grand, puts it in his RRSPs, okay? Or he could do something called a spousal RRSP.
Okay.
A spousal RRSP is pretty neat. Why? Because if you make 130 and your wife or your husband, your spouse makes less income, like 30, 40,000, you should put the money in a spousal RRSP.
Right, because their income is lower.
Lower, so you can pull the money out down the road under their name.
Makes sense.
Get your tax bracket, get your tax savings high. You'll get high because you're in a higher bracket, and take it under your wife's or husband's name, who is making lower income.
Why it's nice to be your spouse. There's tax benefits too.
Alhamdulillah. It completed my iman to alhamdulillah, right? So you said 43%, right? So 43%, guys, that's a tax saving. So I'm gonna go through this as an example. So he puts 10,000 in RSP, gets $4,300 back. Okay, assuming he's salaried. Okay, and it's not a business owner. For business owners, RSPs don't usually make sense. That's just salaried person, right? 43%. So that's roughly $4,000 he's getting back. Okay, he takes the refund that he gets, puts it in a TFSA. See, I didn't make you put money in a TFSA anyways. You put money in RSP, get back $4 grand in tax savings, because that's what RSPs will give you. Okay, get back 4,000 in tax refund money. As long as you paid. What I mean by tax refund, guys, very important. It means you paid your taxes. That's what tax refund means. If you don't pay any taxes, don't expect a tax refund, right? So as long as you paid your taxes, right? And most salary people in Canada pay taxes up front. They pay it on source. So you get back 4,000, okay? He's 40 years old at 65, okay? How does it look for him? And I assumed a 6% growth rate. So every year he puts 10,000, okay? From age 40 to 65. Takes the refund that he gets for 4,000, puts it in as a TFSA, okay? At 6%. Look, the markets are going to go up and down, but let's just assume an average. Some years it's going to go 12, some years it's going to go -2. It's going to do what it needs to do, right? But I'm talking about 25 years, long time. RSP would have 500,000, 548,000. And the TFSA that you didn't put out your money, you technically did because you paid taxes, you got the tax refund, and put in your TFSA is 230,000. And you have like over $700,000 in your RSP and TFSA. And all you did was put 10 grand a year and had the discipline, didn't take your 4 grand and bought a shiny object, took that 4,000 and put it back in your TFSA. And now you have 700,000. And now, for example, some of my clients who have 700,000, they would take out per year income of roughly 30 to 40 grand a year income from the 700,000 a year to live off, right? And you only start with 10,000 at age 40, right? So this is a really good example how powerful.
Very good example.
You could use tax, and I assumed a 6% rate. I didn't go 8, 9, 10. Somebody who's maybe high growth want to achieve that, they could. But this is the power of our RSP TFSA. Sir. Yes. Yes, 100%. So brother made a really good point. As you know, nowadays inflation is so high, right?
Yep.
Right. And if you don't do nothing, you won't even have this type of growth. So you have to invest to fight against inflation. Just to add to that point. Yes. Yeah. 100%.
That's a very excellent point. Maybe repeat the question for those online.
So the comment was basically if you put this 10,000 every year for next 10 years, that's 100 grand in your bank account, and it doesn't do anything. Just say for 10 years you do nothing. The cost of living for you to go buy goods for 100,000, it's not going to be worth that much. It's going to be worth maybe 70,000.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So think about it. Right. Did your hydro bill ever go down? Did they ever call you and say, "Mashallah, you're such a good person. You know, we're going to lower your in-bridge bill." You went to Metro or right wherever you shop. Everything's cost of living, right? Like I use this great example. My mentor said, in 1983, a BMW 3 Series was the car, right? BMW.
Everybody had the 320i.
Right? 320i. It was worth $25,000 price tag MSRP. Go look up a BMW 3 Series, same car for this time in 2023, it's $57,000, right? But it's same car in 2023. In 83, it was a car. So it's just cost of living. So you have to invest. Great point. Inflation will eat it. So the biggest risk to me for my clients is not making a return because I'm going to fight to make a return. Is thing I can control is inflation. I can't control that. So if inflation is too high, that's my stress. That's why, we have issues now globally.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
And I think this point that you brought the question about inflation. So going back to your first comment, put money, people say, I'll just put the money under the mattress, right?
Yeah.
But this is what happens to your point. That $100, 10 years becomes $70, right? And there's this fear and this unknown of investing because one, you're afraid it's not being utilized halal or you're not doing something halal. And two, the fear of losing, right? So all of these things need to balance. That's why there's these things called RRSPs and TFSAs, and then the guidance. Like let's be honest, when we have questions about Islam, we go to qualified scholars. So we should leverage our experts, like we have Brother here, Brother Samir, Brother Muhammad. We have experts here. We should talk to them because they can guide us in these directions, right? So that we don't succumb to these things. Question for you here. Someone is asking about, is group RRSPs allowed?
Yeah. So, I mean, the account type group RRSPs is permissible, just an account. What makes it permissible, what goes inside of it.
Okay.
What are you investing inside of group RRSPs? That can make it halal or not, right? So if I put gold in there, permissible. But if I buy a company that sells a non-permissible good, non-permissible. But group RRSP by itself, nothing wrong. RESPs, Education Savings Plan, nothing wrong. It's an account, guys, right? It's what you put inside of it. Is it earning interest? Then yes, it's not permissible. So just an account, like a LIRA pension plan or a TFSA or you're a professional, you want to have a corporation and you want to invest in your corporation, that's permissible too. So nothing wrong with group RRSPs. It's just what you're investing in, that's where the question comes in.
You mentioned RESPs. Young kids, can you just comment a little bit on RESPs, what they are?
Yeah, so RESPs were designed, I think like in the 70s, I can't remember, but a while back, the government designed an education savings plan for Canadian children up to age 17 you could put in from age 0, and whatever you put in, the government gives you 20%. Simple. They just give you put up to $2,500 a year per child. The government gives you a grant, which you never have to pay back unless the child doesn't go to school. Right? That's the purpose, right? You can't just say, okay, give it to me now. You have to leave it in there and it earns and it pays you 20% a year if you put the money in there. So that's a grant for RESPs. Now, where you invested in, then that's the question.
That's a different topic.
Yeah, that's a different topic, right? So the RESPs are a registered education savings plan. Now, for RSPs, I just want to say, guys, the beneficiary, okay, because this kind of leads to your Islamic inheritance law rules too. The beneficiary for your RSP, it's recommended to be your spouse, okay? However, these questions can arise about how you're dividing your wealth if you pass away. I'm not going to get into that too much. I'm just going to talk about tax angle. If you put your spouse as a beneficiary, then all that money doesn't get taxed. It goes to your spouse. But if you put somebody else except your spouse, most
the
likely
government
you'll
takes.
get taxed, right, based on income. Sorry? Yes, even if you put kids.
So I think what the here is maybe, and maybe you're just talking out loud here, right? If you put your spouse as a beneficiary, at least it goes to them and then they can execute it Islamically.
Yeah.
Rather than if you put it in there, the government's going to take some of it and then you won't be able to execute it all properly. So at the end of the day, you want the money to be executed Islamically from a will perspective, but we need to be careful of how we do it based on the laws of the country. And in Canada, as you say, it's recommended to put it on the spouse so that they're not being taxed. Good
Yeah,
point.
I would do that. My advice would be if you have a spouse, flow the RSP money to your spouse. And then if you have an Islamic will, then maybe have a separate document saying,
Correct.
look, I want you to just, based on your situation, it's your family situation, right? So then you could flow it to your children. Because the other issue is, what if your kids are under 18? Can't get the money anyways. It has to go to a trust. It goes to trust, but it goes to the what do they call them? Guardian. Whoever's the guardian, right? So again, it's going back to the spouse, right? So that's something you kind of keep in mind. TFSA. The really nice thing about a TFSA is you could put your spouse as a beneficiary or anybody else. There's no issues. But again, if you put your spouse, it's kind of really nice. Why? Because like I'm talking about tax angle again, right? Right. To make tax-free money. Say example, you have 100 grand in your TFSA and your spouse has 100,000. Just throw a number, okay? And say the husband passes away. The wife takes over the 100,000, but her new limit is 200,000. Remember I showed the limit was only 88,000? So the spouse's new limit becomes the spouse who passed away. So the limit increases double, where the limit was only 88,000 right now. It goes up every year. What I'm saying is you take over the surviving spouse takes over the deceased spouse's limit. The other thing about a TFS is really good to know. Say example, you have 100,000, okay? Say you pull it out today, all of it, for whatever reason. And the limit is 88,000 by the government that you could put back for new, but your limit is 100 because you took it out and you could put back. Your limit increases. It doesn't decrease. That's another thing to keep in mind. So you could put money back in a TFSA, because remember, TFSA's first two words are the most powerful: tax-free. Yeah. I'll just kind of wrap up. So basically, and then if there's any more questions, but look, basically have a financial plan. Like have at least a roadmap. Understand where you're headed. That's all I'm saying. They don't even make complicated. Just have like something like, you are going to a new destination. You get My GPS, right? You look up GPS and look up where you're headed. So same thing with your finances.
Except for us men, we know where to go, right?
Yes, alhamdulillah. And then recession will come, guys. Ups and downs will happen. You're going to hear in the media, recession. They'll come and they'll go. It's going to happen. This is just a reality of what we live in. Economy, markets will survive, recover, and grow again. That's just how it's been working. And have an investment plan that you stay to your discipline. So if you are trying to, for me is when I sit down with my clients, I say, for you, I want to achieve a 7% return. Example. Then build a portfolio to make 7%. Don't worry about all the noise, the crypto, the mania. It's noise. If you want to build a portfolio to make 12% return, then build it. If that's what you need to achieve, then build that. That's how you have to that's where you get discipline, right? So you don't get caught up. And like I said, have a financial plan. Make sure you do tax planning, not tax filing. So make sure you plan ahead. Like start planning in November, December, or October, because some deadlines are December 31st. As Rizwan Saab can say, some deadlines are end of December, before December. December 31st, not March 1st. So RSP deadline is March 1st. Right. Okay, that's keep in mind, March 1st. Have a will, very important. I meet a lot of clients ask them, do you have a will? 50% say they don't. And have a power attorney. Power attorney is while you're living.
And we know that's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, who made sure that if you're going to bed, you should have your will under your pillow. Now, it doesn't have to be under your pillow, but what he's trying to say is don't go to sleep unless you have your will.
Alhamdulillah. And then have an emergency fund. So in case you lose your job or something happens, you get sick, so you're not selling your investments at the wrong time. Have at least 3 months of your expenses sitting in your mattress. I'm sorry to say, I know people get it, like I should invest this. Yeah. But at least have some, not mattress, literally, I'm saying your bank account. just 3 months. If your expense of just throwing a number is 6,000 times 3, try to have 18,000 as emergency money. Then invest the money. This is my advice, because there's a lot of times where people invest all their money and they lose their job, or they get changed, they have to move to a new job, or some emergency happens, then they're cashing out their investments maybe at the wrong time. They're selling them when the economy's down, when they should be buying. Right?
Yeah.
Buy low.
Very,
right?
very good point. That's
Right? Buy low. MashaAllah, we all buy low, sell high, right? We don't sell. We should always try to achieve that. That's the mentality, right? And like I said, stay disciplined, meaning, focus on your plan. There's a big saying, don't try to time the market. That really truly builds wealth. It's time in the market. So keeping cash forever. Look, I've been debating with my clients lately, because last year we were a little bit more conservative. We wanted to keep more cash in their portfolios. But now we're like, look, we got to put this money to work. We can't sit around and wait forever. It's time in the market that will build wealth. That's something I learned. And then, mashallah, just give back. Recently what's happened in Turkey and, and Syria, may Allah make it easy for our brothers and sisters. That's really powerful. So these are kind of ideas I wanted to share with you guys. I know you had some questions earlier, but I think
we were asking a question. If you go back, can you go back to that Yusuf example for 1 second? Because I like what you say. Sort of just a little small sidetrack, because we are a charitable organization here. In Yusuf's example, if he makes a donation, right? How does that help him? Because some people might not understand how donations helps to kind of maybe bring you in a lower tax bracket potentially, and therefore allowing you to even gain more money, right? If you could just comment.
So as you know, the Canadian government has really good rules and laws for Canadians who want to give. So there's a really good tax benefits for if you want to give. So as you know, usually the rule of thumb is if you give, you could deduct 50% of that. If the agencies, they're registered with the CRA, you can get 50%. So that's one rule, as you know. Now, an investment strategy that I would say is you wouldn't do it through your RSPs or TFSA, but you can actually, there's something called, if you want to Google this, I do this all the time, is I donate shares. So what I do is, for example, if you have a non-registered account, it's not RSP, TFSA, or if you're a business owner and you have shares in Microsoft, for example, and they went up in value, I can actually take some of those shares and donate it, and I can save something called capital gains tax. And I'm getting a little bit technical, but inshallah, we'll do it. You know how we're trying to plan to do a
we'll do another finance
series, right? We'll do something how you could be charitable giving, but also save a lot of money in taxes beyond the regular.
And alhamdulillah, thanks to Help Samir, we're set up for that at Cedar Community Center to accept your shares, right? So 100%. You win, we win, government loses, but everyone's winning.
No, but it's actually, they want that because then they don't need to have all this aid.
That's true.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
The reason they want you to do that, it's like same thing with retiring with RSPs. If you don't have money, you're going to be on like government income.
Well,
right? So they want you to have assets so you could depend on yourself, right? So I think to answer your question, so there are some strategies where you could donate, but for Yusuf's example, I would maybe take money out of my TFSA if I wanted to give zakat and sadaqah.
Okay.
But it would be a different strategy.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions online or in person before we wrap up? Yes, brother.
I just wanted to make a suggestion for the young.
Yes.
There's the career of your job. They can start contributing maximum whatever they can to and down the road they can shoot that and borrow top investors capital.
Oh, you know what?
Thank you.
Mashallah,
Repeat the question.
Rizal Saib, he just said a really good point that I forgot. So, mashallah, really good point. So, one of the other benefits of RSP is if you're in the market to buy a first buyer home, right? You're trying to buy a house and it's your first time. The government allows you, say, spouse times like two spouse, 35,000 times two. So you could build up 70,000 in your RSPs, and you could take that 70,000 out at interest free. It's an interest free loan from your own. It's like you're loaning yourself, basically taking the money out of your RSPs, right? And then you put it you put it as a down payment 2 years towards your first time house. And then you just have to put it back in. But that's a really good vehicle for young folks. Why? Because they'll help you have that money available, not last minute you're scrambling, like, and then calling the mom and dad bank, right? Right. So that's a really good thing. Another one I just want to add to that. There's a new account coming to Canada. It's called the tax-free home savings account. Right? Is it called tax something? Yeah, and it's a hybrid of an RSP and a TFSA.
Oh, okay.
And that's
wow.
another account that the government's allowing. I think it's 40,000. I have an article about it. It's coming out in April. The accounts are going live April 1st. It's for first-time home buyers. It's giving, because people are complaining, man, like, yeah, 70,000 is great, but I don't get nothing with 70,000.
Nowadays, I know. Yeah.
Right? So the government launched a new program that allows you, it gives you best of both worlds of an RSP and TFSA for first-time home buyers. So additional on top, so just to add to that. But RSPs have been a great vehicle for first-time home buyers. I personally used my RSPs.
Yeah, I use it for myself. It was 25,000 back in my day.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Right? We're kind of old now.
We're getting old.
So it's been a great, and just every year you just put back small amounts.
I think
you pay back in 15 years, right?
Yeah, you can pay in installment. But you make a good point, and I think that's this whole age of cryptocurrency and this thing, and some want to do sports betting and all. It's the age of where everybody thinks, if I do it, I'm going to get the money tomorrow. This is not the strategy of investing. That's just gambling, and it's just like closing your eyes. You wouldn't close your eyes to cross the road and hope I don't get hit, right? You got to have a plan. Okay, it's a red light. I'm going to go. That's the plan here. Investment has to take time, and I think if I got anything out of it today, the main thing out of it is take your time. Know you have a game plan of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is, and work on that game plan. But if you're planning to put money in today and walk out tomorrow, good luck, right? It's not going to happen. Nothing like that happens. That's why nothing in this world is like that, right?
100%. Yeah. Just to add to that, good things take time, right? So just take your time, understand strategy, another rule is if you're able to save. And this is for the young folks again. Also, it's really important because if the young folks can be strong, you're next in line to take over and build our communities. Try to save anywhere from 5 to 25% of your paycheck, and then invest that, and then live off 75. If we can only save 10%, then live off 90. Right? Try to build that habit, and time is on yours. Like if I could have started putting money when I was 18, 19, or 20. Right? It would be, think about it.
Yeah, I wish I did that.
42. Like, just think about it. I would be so time is on your side.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. You're right.
Yes.
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 Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. See, look, so many, just to add to his points, he's made 4 points, right, for RSPs. It's just for young folks, really important is, it forces you to save, right? You mentioned, right? It reduces your taxes today, right? So that's another benefit. So you pay less taxes, and who doesn't want? I'll sign up for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
That's why it's used for first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. Actually, on that question, somebody asked, where does the home buyer payback go? Back into your RSPs?
Yeah, it's back.
Back into your RSPs. Brother Muhammad. Yes. Right.
Yeah. So I just want to give credit to Rizal Sabir to bring that up. You're putting it back in your RSPs in 15 years. So it's an interest-free loan.
It's like a free borrow, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
100%.
Yeah.
So just to kind of re-add to that, if you make higher income, let's just use an example, there's a big gap. Like if you make 100 and your wife or your spouse, let's just say, makes 30,000, right? Either way, right? Whatever the case is, you can actually use a spousal RSP and invest in a spousal RSP. you get the tax credit at 100, so you get a deduction, and then down the road, if you want to take it out, you take it out of your wife's or your spouse's, your husband's, whoever is the lower income, you take out the lower incomes bracket. So now imagine you got a 40% deduction up front. Amazing, right? 40% today. The money grew tax deferred inside, right? Maybe in between I got to use it for a first time home buyer. That's another benefit. And then I pulled it out under my wife, my spouse's name, and her income's taxes were 10%, 15%. So 40 minus 15, that's 25 cents to the dollar. That's a good return, right? I don't think the markets are giving us that right now.
No way.
Right?
No.
Right? So think about those. Just to answer your question, spousal RSPs are, please do your research on them. Like I know that when you walk into the branches or the banks, they always kind of say, are you going to buy an RSP? I don't understand buy. What does that mean? It means you need to kind of understand, what am I investing? What is this RSP going to benefit me? Understand your income taxes. Understand how much income you make, and then work your way back. And there's some good material on RSPs, guys, online if you want to take your time and read about it. But does that answer?
Oh yeah, I know. Sorry, we were taking about your time.
No, I don't know. No worries.
But if there's no other question, that I think online we're good to. Alhamdulillah, we had a really wonderful session. I see, Samir, you're generous enough to share your contact information. You don't have to do that, but Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
Samir is giving back a lot to the community, supporting like halal food festivals. He's a sponsor of one of our golf tournaments, coming back, giving back to the community. So he's investing time in the community. This is not in any way a ploy to get more customers or clients at all. He wants to educate us. And by educating us, he's giving us information. It's up to us. We can go and use Mufti Google for a question, or you can go see a sheikh about a question. Up to you. So do your own research. No one's forcing you to go see anybody, but each has its benefits and each has its cons and pros, right? So do whatever works for you. I personally recommend working with someone like Samir or any other brother you know, because they've been in the industry, they can explain us better. And at the end of the day, we all have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best we can say is we did our best. Is it going to be 100% perfect? Of course not, but we'll do our best. Brother Samir mentioned something about purification, because there is that not 100%. So when the 100% doesn't work out, we'll take that purification, meaning that we know we had no choice, some interest came in, no problem. We'll take this interest and pay off interest, or just give it away somewhere else. Not to the masjid, because the masjid can't take it, but somewhere else, because we cannot consume interest. That's the bottom line.
You know, it's a really good question. Some people ask that question. I have cash sitting and I earn interest. I highly recommend you really sit down with your local imam, because it's very important to be local, right? Like just think about it and understand, okay, look, I didn't need to. I had this cash sitting in, because we have to do that too. We have to set our clients a purification amount. That we just recommend that it's a nominal amount, but you should try to not keep it in your wealth. You should just ask your local imam what you should do with that. Where should you give just to get rid of it? But you should try your best to purify it. Don't keep it, because unfortunately there is, if you have a savings account or some type of investment account, there is a law in Canada that has to pay you unless you convince them that you could turn it off. And it's very rare that they'll turn it off, because maybe 10 years later you might say, hey, how come you didn't pay me because I wanted it, right? It's because they're afraid of that. So you have to ask them if you can turn it off or not, then talk to your local imam. Like I was talking to Dr. Slimi about it just right now.
Right.
This is a big thing. I'm like, okay, my clients are asking me, who should I give it to?
Mm-hmm.
Is it, so just talk to your local imam about where
exactly,
right? Like, do you have any perspective on that?
Wait, so thank you. So like I said, we can't take it from the masjid. The masjid needs pure donation. Just an example, some people think, oh, I can go win the lottery and give it to the masjid. No, you can't. Yeah. We can't accept it, right? But Brother Asam, how would you know? You're right. We would not know, but if you told us, then we couldn't take it, right? And we want barakah in the money because we need it pure and clean. When you feed your children and the clothing, we know the hadith where the Prophet said that the man, he was disheveled and lost in the desert and he had nothing and he raised his hand to cry to Allah. Like he is in the most desperate situation and he's in a situation where he has nothing and he's turning to Allah and saying, Ya Allah, help me. I'm paraphrasing here, right? And then the Prophet says, don't you think that Allah would answer the dua? And then they said, yes, Ya Rasulullah, He would answer the dua. And then the Prophet said, how can Allah answer the dua when his food was haram, when his money was haram, when his clothing was haram? You see, this is the importance of halal and haram. It intersects your dua. It blocks your duas, potentially. So we want to keep everything clean. So if we know at the end of the day, let's say, just an example, you have a savings account because you need it for whatever reason, and you earned simple numbers, $100 interest. Take that $100 interest and just give it to maybe, I don't know, some hospital foundation or something that is not Islamic, just to get rid of it. Or sometimes we are forced to pay interest on something, whatever it may be, not to go into those types of conversations, mortgages, and whatever the reason, everybody knows it, then take interest to pay interest. That's another thing. And of course, the Fiqh Council of North America and IFAB, which Dr. Hamasimi have talked about this. Speak to the ulama, and they will guide us or guide you based on your situation. Okay? All right, let's wrap up, inshallah. It's been a wonderful, wonderful session. Alhamdulillah, thank you for everyone online participating. I will say this, if you have any questions, feel free to add to the same video on the YouTube. We'll pass it on to Samir. He shares contact. Please don't email him every single day. He's being kind enough. But if you want to get together and get some advice and honor his time, he will honor your time, inshallah. Take care, my brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you again, Samir. Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you, brothers.